Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's demonstration of using the workbook to submit administrative claims for the CARE Act program. We're really happy to have you here for this tutorial. The agenda for today's demonstration is to do a brief overview of the CARE Act claiming process and what activities are eligible to be claimed. And then we'll pivot and look at an actual demonstration and walkthrough of how to complete both the Excel template that is used to document your claiming and then the supplementary PDF that is also submitted with that Excel workbook. So the objectives for today, we want to make sure that at the end of this session, you have the ability to know how to complete these documents so that you can submit claims to DHCS and receive reimbursement for CARE Act activities. This is a really important part of the CARE Act program and will support sustainability of the program over time. Just as a reminder, because we won't be getting into all the specifics around the actual claiming requirements or guidelines, there are two really excellent resources that are available to you to reference. One is the Claiming for Administrative Activities Related to Care Guide. This is I would say more than a brief, a really thorough description of the claiming process and requirements. The second is the Claiming and Billing FAQs. These are really a collection of questions that we've received from the counties over the course of the CARE Act program to help answer frequent questions that we receive about the claiming and billing process. So those are all available on our CARE Act resources website. I will be the presenter for today's training. My name is Leslie Brooks. I am with Health Management Associates, and I'm really happy to get to have a lot of experience collaborating with different health systems to design and implement and evaluate different models of care, whether that's behavioral health integration or CalAIM initiatives. I'm passionate about working in the safety net population and have loved being a CARE Act county liaison for 9 counties during the CARE Act program. So happy to be here for you today. As we transition to talking about our overview of the claiming, want to call out that there are really 5 core activities that are eligible to claim for. Those are attending court hearings, preparing court reports, conducting outreach and engagement. This includes travel time, and it's also really important to note that this includes activities that happen prior to completing a petition for an individual and after a petition is filed. Delivering notices or serving notices, and then all of the dating reporting requirements that go along with the CARE program. So these activities are described more fully in the bin. And just want to note that as you, in the real world, provide care activities, you may have questions about which activity falls in which area. There are some that maybe would be a fit for more than one activity. So when in doubt, use your best judgment to decide which category any given activity falls into. One other important thing about CARE Act claiming is that when we think about those 5 categories of eligible activities, there's a supplementary component called an ancillary activity that can also be claimed for across any of those 5 core types. So ancillary means something that provides necessary support, help, or supplemental value to a primary activity. That's just the general definition of ancillary. And so when we talk about ancillary activities in the CARE Act program, which you can claim for, we're talking about time spent preparing for a task, like maybe you're going to go and conduct outreach, but you need to look up the person's information, find their address, prepare driving directions. That's an example of ancillary activities that you could claim for under the outreach and engagement activity type. Or it could be also something like holding an internal meeting. For example, maybe you need to meet with your data team to talk about how you're going to modify your EHR to be able to report on the fields required to meet the care reporting guidelines, that meeting to have that internal discussion and preparation could be billed as an ancillary activity under the data and reporting category. And the third type of ancillary activities is supervisory oversight. So anytime you think about supervision of any of the CARE Act work you're doing, like a manager reviewing a draft of a court report, you could claim for that time under the court report category. So want to make sure that everyone is aware that in addition to the actual time spent conducting an activity, the preparation, internal meetings, and supervisory oversight time for those 5 categories is also claimable. One quick note, it is important to note that ancillary activities do not include incentives for participating individuals or the cost of any tangible goods. So transportation passes, meals, phones, etc. Those would not be claimable provisions. So now that we've done a brief overview or refresher of what activities we can claim for, including ancillary activities, we're going to go ahead and demonstrate completing the claiming workbook and PDF form together. So now that we have pulled up our CARE Act claiming workbook, I want to make a special point of acknowledging that when you start to prepare your quarterly claiming submission, you want to make sure that you have the latest version of the workbook. Because the reimbursement rates do change over time, you just want to make sure you have the latest copy. So you can see here at the bottom of the instructions tab, I have a note that says revised April 21st of 2026. This is at the time of this recording. This is the latest workbook. So just make sure you have the latest version moving forward. Now, the workbook is comprised of 3 tabs. You can see here along the bottom, instructions, claim summary, and data entry. I will be your instructions for today, so we can skip this tab, but just note that there are written instructions for how to complete the data entry tab. Okay, so we're going to start on the second tab, which is claim summary. And the first step we want to take is to populate the fiscal year and the fiscal quarter for the CARE activities that you're claiming for. So I'm going to be claiming for this current fiscal year and this current quarter, which is Q4. I need to include the number of CARE Act participants that are active. I am going to use 10. And then I want to include my county. I'm just going to select Alameda because it's the first county in the list, but this is a demonstration only and does not represent any data or is not a reflection of Alameda County in any way. So just keep that in mind. Okay, so at this point, we are going to pause with the claim summary. We're going to move to data entry, complete our claiming there, and then we're going to come back to the claim summary tab to finish up. So just to recap, all we've done is enter the fiscal year and fiscal quarter that we're claiming for, the number of our active care participants, and indicated our county name. Data entry is where we really get to start to write out the activities that we're claiming for. And before we get into that, we have to complete again the fiscal year here at the top of the workbook. So even as a person demonstrating this, when I was preparing for today, I was encountering error messages and I couldn't figure out what was going on. And it was because I forgot to select the fiscal year on this data entry tab. So this is a really important field to select so that the rest of the workbook works well for you. Okay, so now that we've selected the fiscal year at the top of this sheet, we can look at the next table. So here you'll see that there are 6 columns. We are responsible for completing 4: the category or activity, the employee type, the employee name, and the number of hours. Rate and total are automatically calculated within the workbook. So I'm going to start by selecting my first category from the dropdown. I'm going to select outreach and engagement. For the employee type, it was our LCSW. and their name is Nicole. And Nicole spent in this quarter 5 hours and 10 minutes on outreach. Now, I want to make a note about how you document the minutes in this time column. In the care claiming workbook, we are rounding increments of an hour up to the 0.25. So that's either 5.25, 5.5, or 5.75. So if you think of 30 minutes equaling half of an hour, if Nicole had spent 5 hours and 25 minutes on this activity, we would be rounding up to 5.5 hours. Because Nicole spent 5 hours and 10 minutes on outreach and engagement, we're going to round up to the nearest quarter, which is the 15. So 5.25 hours. And you'll see here the rate for that outreach and engagement activity pre-populates, as does the total, multiplying the rate by the number of hours. So let's do another activity. Let's say that as part of this outreach and engagement, there was also a notice provided. This also was done by our LCSW. You'll note that you can use the drop down, or as you begin to type into the cell, it will pre-populate. The rate pre-populates hours. I'm going to say this was 2 hours and a half. So we'll do 2.5 hours, and here you see the total pre-populates. Now, let's say that they also had to do some data reporting activity. This is where we met with our database administrators, that's myself, and we had an ancillary activity where we had a planning meeting to talk about how to capture the time that Nicole was spending on outreach and engagement, how to report the outreach and engagement that was happening for the number of referrals and potential petitioners or respondents, excuse me. And so I'm going to include a couple hours of ancillary and then the actual work of getting the system prepared for data reporting. So I'm going to say that we spent 4 hours on the data reporting activity. Now, we're also going to say that we had court hearing time. So our supervisor, maybe it's our program manager, went to a couple court hearings, and they had ancillary time for driving to these court hearings in addition to the actual time in the court hearings. So I'm going to go ahead and say that this was 8 hours in that quarter. And we also had another staff member who provided some outreach and engagement support. This was our peer team member named Sarah. And Sarah helped with tracking down the addresses of individuals that we were going to meet with, preparing the driving directions, and accompanied the social worker. So in addition to the actual outreach and engagement, they supported a lot of ancillary work. And so we're going to say that they spent 10 hours in that quarter preparing for or conducting outreach and engagement activity. And then I'm going to add one more activity here, court report. I'm going to have that our LCSW prepared a report for the court. It took them just under 3 hours, we'll say 2.75 hours. So that would translate to 2 hours and 45 minutes. And then we'll also say that we had a supervisor, our program manager, who had to review that court report and maybe provided a little feedback to Nicole before it was submitted. So we'll just say that this was a little bit over an hour, like an hour and 10 minutes. So we'll round up to that hour and 15, which you reflect as 1.25. And at this point, I have completed entering my claiming activities and ancillary activities on the claiming workbook in the data entry tab. So now we're going to go back to the claim summary, and you'll notice that something has changed. So back at the claim summary tab, you'll notice the information that we filled out is still populated, but now the table of our activity has pulled over the totals that we entered on the data entry tab. So for each of our activities, we have the total hours that were reported, the rate of that activity, and the total claiming amount. And then you can see the amount for our total claim here, $3,129. So at this point, we have completed our claiming Excel workbook, and we're able to move on to our second and final step of preparing our claim. That is to complete the claiming certification. So you'll notice on the claim summary tab, there's a link to the claim certification that's hosted on the DHCS website. If you click on that link, it will open this PDF. And this PDF really serves as something that we will translate information from the Excel workbook into. So I'm going to do a split screen model so you can see how in the real world I might actually do this. To start on the PDF, we're just going to start at the top and work our way down. So we're going to put in today's date, or the date that we're preparing this claim. I'm going to say it's today, the 11th. We're going to use the same fiscal year that we claimed for on our Excel workbook and the same fiscal quarter. And as I do that, you'll see that the rates for those activities populate. I'm also using our county name, the code will pre-populate, and then the number of CARE Act participants. So this is a one-to-one match between what we have in our Excel workbook and what we're putting on our reimbursement claim PDF. Now, the next thing we do is we just populate the total number of hours column. We have the total number of hours column here on the claim summary tab, so we can go ahead and enter those values, working right down the spreadsheet. And I think this is actually really helpful just to make sure that you've entered it right. You'll see that the total claim amount pre-populates, and you can kind of double check that that aligns with what was in the Excel workbook, and it does. That looks great. So it's just a nice way to double check your work. The last few fields we complete are executed at. This is where you can put your county again, and then the name of the person who completed the claiming. So I'll say my title is Program Coordinator for CARE. I'm also the data analyst. Okay, so after we input the name and title of the person who's completing the claiming, we do need to have the signature of the mental health director or their designee and the date that they approve and verify the accuracy of these claiming activities. So I'm going to go ahead and, as an example, add a signature for our demo mental health director and care program manager, Patricia. So I prepared it for Alameda County, Patricia signing off on it, and now we have completed the second part of our claiming submission, which is this PDF form. So just to recap, step one is completing the Excel workbook, and you need to do an initial input on the claim summary tab. This is where you complete the fiscal year, the number of CARE Act participants, and your county. And then the data entry tab, where we also complete the fiscal year. And then we list out our activities, the employee type, the employee name, and the total hours rounded to the nearest quarter. And then we go back to the claim summary to see what our total hours and total claim amounts are. Those become the inputs for our PDF that accompanies the Excel workbook. So when we're done translating our total hours and our fiscal and county information into the claim PDF, we sign it as the preparer. We have our mental health director or their designee sign and date it. And then both the Excel workbook and the PDF are submitted to care_claiming@dhcs.ca.gov. So that takes us to the end of today's overview of eligible CARE Act activities for claiming, and also for the review and demonstration of how to actually complete the CARE Act claiming workbook and accompanying PDF. We hope that today's session was helpful for you and that you feel more empowered and knowledgeable about how to submit claims for CARE Act activities. It's super important to the sustainability of the excellent work you all are doing in the CARE Act program. So please feel free to reference this recording, the other resources that we've mentioned, or reach out to us directly if you have any questions or need any assistance. You can see our email here is care_claiming@dhcs.ca.gov. Thank you so much.